Hello and thank you for watching Scumbag Customs. In this video I'm going to magnetize some of the main parts from the Sector Mechanicus terrain sets. I have used the alchemite stack and the ferrotonic incinerator, but you can find these parts in many other kits from the Sector Mechanicus range from Games Workshop. In this video I am going to focus on the main body parts, so no walkways and no ladders. I have already taken them off the sprues and gotten rid of some of the mold lines, but for easier access I have not glued them together yet. If you have, for most parts this shouldn't be a problem, but it's easier if you don't glue them together before you start magnetizing. In this video I'm going to use a lot of different size magnets. Mainly I'm going to use these 15 times 2 millimeter disc magnets, but I'll also be using some 6 times 3 millimeter magnets, some 20 times 0.8 millimeter magnets. I will use an odd cheaper one that I think is like 19 millimeters by 3. And I'll be using my favorite super glue, this Loctite gel. I bought this one in Japan. I know it is available in Europe, but I think you can find something similar in the rest of the world as well. I just like to use the gel one because it just lets you control easier. It doesn't flow away everywhere, and it just works very well with the magnets. The ferrotonic incinerator is a pretty straightforward piece. You have some connection points here and here, and it is even possible to connect something over here. I'm going to be using a 15 times 2 millimeter magnet, but since it is not a perfect fit to go in any of these holes, I'm going to start with making a little tool to help them snap into the perfect position. For this tool I'm going to use one of these connectors and a 12 times 3 millimeter magnet. This is pretty straightforward. Just put some glue in there. And then drop in your magnet. Just give it some good time to dry so the magnet doesn't drop out when you try to use it. Now that our first magnet is set, we can start using it as a tool. So I like to just kind of hold it in there, then put some glue in and just let the magnet jump into place. Let's have a look. So start with putting some glue in there. Make sure you use enough, because sometimes it goes a bit deeper or higher and then the glue doesn't catch. So press this one in there. And again, this is a 15 times 2 millimeter magnet, which we can just drop in there. Okay, so this is already stuck. Now just give it some time to dry before you start with the other panels. First one is set, so let's have a look at the other two. Let's start with this one. Again, start with some glue. and just drop it on there. Give it a couple seconds and it might actually already be set. So we can move on to the next one. I'm not sure where exactly it's going to end up, so I'm just going to put some extra glue there. You have to be careful that this one goes into a position that we want. I'm actually going to turn it around this time. So instead of connecting it like this, it will go this way. Okay, so this piece is not ideal for a real connection, but later on we can perhaps use a part like this that fits better. Besides a walkway, the most obvious thing that you might want to use at the top of your incinerator is going to be this dome piece from the alchemite stack. So before I move on with using magnets on this piece, I will start with getting the dome ready. Okay, so there's going to be a little magnet in here, which is pretty much the same as the ones we've done before. So again, I'm going to be using a 15 times 2 millimeter piece. Some glue in there. Use my little helper. And off you go. I also like to magnetize this bit so you can change around a little bit what you can put on the top, like this little piece or just this one on its own. So it should be fairly easy to fit a magnet in there as well. Let's see which one fits the best. An 8 by 2 millimeter magnet seems to fit in that little hole perfectly. So let's put it in. Once you're all set, now we will get to the more trickier part. These gaps in here are about 3.5 to 4 millimeters high. I think they're just a tiny bit under 4 millimeters. So we're going to have to see how we're going to solve that with our magnet. So I wouldn't recommend going for 4 millimeters because it might just stick out a little bit and then the connection might leave a little gap, which doesn't look nice. Also, you want them to line up perfectly. I mean, if it goes a little bit like that, it just doesn't look that nice. And you have to be aware of the way that these bolts look. So if you line them up like that, that also doesn't look that nice. So you want to ideally have 4 points in here. So you can always go 45 degrees where everything lines up perfectly. I'm going to use these 8 millimeter by 3 millimeter magnets, which just come out a little bit under the line, but they should generate enough pull to attract the magnet on the other side. So let's give that a try. Now I'm going to try and line it up perfectly. So you can see there's a little bit of a bump there. So I'm going to use that. Put a little bit of glue. This is the first one. I don't need to worry about the polarity yet. Just trying to get it in the center of that. So that it's stuck in there. Now, when you go and do the rest of that, make sure that you put them in the same way polarity wise, otherwise it will not work. I'm going to put the others in off camera to save you all some time. As you can see, I've now put all 4 of them in there. I've added some extra glue around them on the sides just to make sure that they're not going anywhere. So give that a little bit extra time to dry, but at least use some time to already start with the dome. So the same for this one. Try to get them on the 4 points and make sure that the polarity catches up with the ones you've done on the incinerator. I'm going to use the exact same magnets. Now this one might look to be a little bit of a problem, but if you put just 3 in there, I think that will be actually enough to keep it in space. So let's go one by one. Doesn't seem to be perfectly in center, so I'm going to try and realign it a little bit till I'm happy. Go to the next point. Sorry about those messages. Not sure if you can hear them though. Okay, that's the last one. So let's add some extra glue. To make sure they're not going anywhere. And make sure you let plenty of time to dry before trying it out, because you don't want them to snap off once they are not dried yet. So let's get back when they're completely dried out. As impatient as I am, I already gave it a try. Luckily for me, they are set enough. So as you can see, the pull on these magnets, I wouldn't really advise for going horizontal. Maybe use a bit stronger magnets, but for just using it vertically, which is a bit difficult to show on the camera, it is perfect. As well as the lineup seems to be great. So you only need 3 magnets on this side. The fourth is really not necessary. You can put it in there if you want, but I think it might be a little bit more difficult. It will give you a little bit of extra pull though, so just see what you like to do. I'm quite happy with this, so let's move on to some other pieces. For those of you who like to follow the box art, let's have a look at how to magnetize these pieces to go on top of here. Because I haven't glued it together yet, we can see there's the same little bit in there. So again, we can go for the 15 times 2 millimeter magnet. Seems to hold fine. So let's just let that set for a little bit. Once that's set, we can have a look at how we want to magnetize the other bits, as they are not really as standard as the other stuff. Now you can see there's quite a big hole in here. I measured it to be about 33 millimeters, which is just a little bit too large to fit a 32 mil base inside, but if you use some extra glue you could do that. I however have a kind of circle cutter that I used on some plastic card to make a 33 millimeter round disc out of plastic card. If you don't have a circle cutter, I strongly advise getting one. I have this one, which is just a little bit sturdier than some of the ones out there. Takes a little while to get used to make like perfect sized circles. I rushed this one a little bit so you can see a little bit of an edge there. But that shouldn't really matter, as it just kind of will go in there, as you can see. So I think I'll probably put the magnet on first and then glue it some way. And I also want to have a magnet right there, so I can put this bit in there. So all we have to do for that is see if I have a magnet that is larger than that hole, so it wouldn't go anywhere. Let's have a look at what I have. I've had a look at the magnets that I have, and I decided to use this 20 millimeter times 0.8 millimeter magnet. I'm going to use this one first because I have to kind of glue it in like this, which is going to be a little bit difficult to get it exactly centered, as I have to kind of eyeball it. So let's just hope that that will work. It seems all right. And later on we can glue this together. No, I think we can just do that now. Might need to switch my super glue, as I use it quite a lot. And just let that set for a bit. In the meanwhile, we can have a look at putting the magnet on there. Doesn't really matter which kind you use for this, as long as it's strong enough. As I have quite a lot of the 15 times 2 millimeter ones, that's what I'm going to be using. Given that some time to dry, what I think is going to be safest is just put it on there. Let's hope that this magnet in there is not going to cause too much trouble, which it might. So I might have just screwed myself over there. So maybe I'll just try put some glue there first. See if I can just hold it like that and then bend the rest in later. See if I'm not getting too impatient as I usually am. But that seems to work alright for now, so I'm just going to move forward a bit so you don't have to look at all of this stuff. I've let a lot of time to dry and used a lot of glue, but I think it actually turned out alright. Won't win any beauty contest, but as it's on the bottom you won't be able to see it anyway. So as you can see, it's holding up pretty well. So let's move on to the next section. It's going to be this little part. As you can see, there are some grooves in here. I have this 23 millimeter magnet, which seems to be a perfect fit. But as I might want to use it later on for something else, as I only have one of these, I think I will make a solution by using another little bit of round plastic card. So what I'm going to do is cut that out and get back to you when I've finished. I actually ended up making a 25 millimeter bit, and it still seems to be having more than enough space, so I think you could go even with a bit larger than that. So let's see what will be the best way. I'm going to use a 15 times 2 millimeter magnet again, just because I have most of those available. Let's try to center this as best as possible. And let's have a look when that dries, what kind of magnet we could do in the top. Okay, so that seems to be a perfect fit for the 20 millimeter times 0.8 millimeter magnet. Which means we can already glue this in here. So pop some glue in there. Getting harder to get the glue out. This in there. And there we go. Try to center it. Maybe. Put it in there. Might help with centering it. Now that that's dried up, we can put the 20 mil times 0.8 mil magnet in. I got some new glue, as you might be able to see, as I got sick of the other one. Just checking the polarity. Whoa. And there we go. Our next part is going to be this, almost the top bit of the chimney. Now here in the top, it's the same magnet that will fit in there. But the bottom one is just a little bit under 18 millimeters. I have this cheap kind of magnet, but it should be strong enough. But it just happens to be a tiny bit too large for this to easily close. So I'm going to use a knife and try and scratch out a little bit of this plastic to see if I can make it fit. Just kind of scrape it a little bit. The carving has seemed to done the trick, so let's get the magnet glued in here. Start with one side. And there you go. So then we can try that little piece. a lot easier. And as a final part of the chimney, we have this little bit. Now again, I don't think I have a magnet that fits in there perfectly. So I'm just gonna drop some glue in there and then just put this little magnet in there. A bit hard to get it centered. If you think you've given everything enough time, we can have a little look of how it will all go together. A little too tall for the camera, but this all seems to go fine. This little bit as well. So let's see if we can make this little piece go over here. For that I'm going to use another 12 by 3 millimeter magnet. And that fits in there perfectly. Okay. And as you can see, that goes really nicely together. Let's move on to our next part. See, I haven't glued it yet, so we can easily access these little parts. Now you need to look out a little bit, because if you want to magnetize this part here, if you put a magnet in here, it might make it difficult. So I have to think about how to put those for a bit. And then I also like to put a magnet right there. I will start with a 20 millimeter magnet over here, which seems to cover that part perfectly. Going to use my little tool. This time going to use it the other way around, because that's how you will be able to connect over there. Let's see. Or maybe I don't need to use it. That seems to fit fine. That seems to catch on. It's not the strongest connection ever, but it'll do. So then I'll move on to the other half. Grab another 15 times 2 millimeter magnet. So this is the part that I want to use that 23 millimeter magnet for. As you can see that goes in there quite perfectly. And I was thinking it would be nice to be able to use it on top of this dome. So you need to check the polarity that little bit, and then hope it doesn't cause too many problems with the magnet in there. So I'm going to start gluing it on this side, then this side. But before I do that, I'm going to see how I can solve this little bit. So if you have a look at the big hole on top, if you have a leftover 32mm base, that actually goes in there perfectly. And you can still put this on top without leaving any real gaps. Don't really want to use a base, but I think that's just the best way to do it, so I'll go for that. So let's start with the 23 that is millimeter magnet. Again, want to make sure the polarity is correct. Start with this side. Put enough glue in there so the magnet on the other side doesn't either pull it out or push it away. Okay. Now it's best to just let that set till that is ready to go, that it doesn't go anywhere, because if I glue this on and it gets pulled away by that one, you're just going to be in a lot of trouble because you have to pull both halves apart again. So I'm just going to give that more than enough time to set and get back to you when that's done. I think I've waited enough, so let's put some glue on this part here. Don't forget some glue for the magnet. Let's give that a go. It's actually pulling towards the other magnet. You can see there's a bit of a gap in there. So maybe fill that with some extra glue. And that doesn't have the strongest pull, doesn't lift, but you know, it's alright. It's better than nothing. And it also helps just making this little point a bit heavier, so it's harder to knock it over. So let's have a look at this part. Put some glue on there. I'm not exactly sure where it's going to catch, touch. So let's hope that does it. Okay, that seems to still go on there. This little part as well. So it's time to put a magnet in there. And this doesn't really matter as long as it's not too big, that it sticks out. So I again like to go for the 15 times 2 millimeter. As you can see, that still leaves enough space to fit these parts. Now I'm going to put a magnet in here, and hopefully they'll be strong enough to just pull this down so that I don't need to put a magnet in this little bit. I'm going to use the 20 times 0.8 millimeter because that just fits in there perfectly. Need to see. Okay, it goes on the deeper part. Let's have a look if this has enough power to pull this down. It's kinda okay, but maybe it's better to just put one of those thinner magnets in there. I'm going to use the same magnet again. Let's hope it's thin enough to not create a gap. That seems alright, and that is a lot stronger. So you can put one of those magnets in here as well. This is the 12 times 3 millimeter magnet. Not exactly sure where it will grab, touch. Okay. Seems to dry pretty quick. And yeah, that's on there. Okay, so you can also use it on this part. Wherever you like, however you like it. Time to move on to this little piece. Now this is where the 20mm magnets go in perfectly. These two parts. You could go with some thicker magnets, but as I have these, I just like to keep using them. Now there is a little space over there that I think fits the 15mm one that I'm hoping to use to be able to go like this. So you have to watch out with the polarity, because it would also be nice to go this way. When magnetizing this part, it's kind of important to see where you want it to go, what you want it to connect to, because of the polarity issues. Now I've multiple of these, so I can do one this way, one way and one the other way. So for the purpose of keeping it easy, let's just put it together. Some glue in there. Just kind of keep everything going up and down the same way. Okay, give that some time to set. And then the one is going in here. Maybe I can check that one quickly. So that seems to go that way. So put that one in there. And then the 15mm one, I will set the same direction as the one above, and just kind of hope for the best. Maybe it's actually better to set it the same direction as this one, because then they'll both attract whatever is going to be under there. Okay, and then I can glue these parts together. There we go. So, ooh, that seems to go the other way. So You need to make one that goes the opposite direction for this one. But as you'll be having plenty of these bits, you should be able to make some of those. And finally, I'd like to go for this little piece. Now, it's hard to fit a magnet in there. I think it's almost at 18 millimeters. So I used my circle cutter again and some plastic card and made some kind of 18 mil circles, which I'm going to glue in there. You can see that fits all right. I mean, it doesn't look amazing, but it'll just give me something to glue the magnet on. So let that set to make sure it's not going anywhere. Maybe add a little bit more glue in here. Going to use some of the 12 times 3 millimeter magnets. Let's see. How I'd like to use them. Not sure if that will go. So let's just put it in the same direction. Close that up. Okay, so maybe add a little bit more in here because this has a little bit of a gap. And that seems to go all right. So that just leaves a lot of these pieces left. Now the 12 times 3 millimeter magnets are perfect for these. Just have a look at what your polarity is. I mean, how do you want to do them? Do you all want to fit them in here? Sometimes you might want to be able to connect them like this. So I'd suggest switching the polarities around a little bit, but this should be pretty straightforward. Just put a little glue in there. Pop the magnet in. You can even catch on like that. Or go for the other way around. Pop some glue in there again. Put it in there. And you can make a connection that way. And that concludes my video. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you have any questions, please leave a comment. If you'd like to support my channel, please subscribe and leave a like on this video.